What would you do if you found the entire world against you? Could you stand brave against an ocean of naysayers, sneering at every single stumble along your journey? Would you be willing to fight the uphill battle not just against judges meant to be impartial, but even against those who were supposed to be your allies, scheming behind your back and undermining all you've worked for? Could you survive? Would you turtle up, stick your head in the sand, and wait for the storm to pass? Could you tune out the noise? Or would it become an unavoidable chorus of doubt echoing inside your mind? Would the weight of all that opposed you win out, or would spite carry you to new heights previously thought impossible? I guess it depends on the players in question. It may sound far-fetched, but this is exactly what happened to a team right here in years past. Drama afoot at seemingly every turn, sometimes self-inflicted, but not once did they bow. Through black eyes and bloody noses aplenty, the one thing they utterly refused to do was give up. This is the story of one of the least fortunate, most tenacious, and certainly most controversial team in League Zero history. Season 2, Geometric. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty, I want to make it abundantly clear from what angle this story is being told. Obviously, Geometric is controversial. I mean, just look at the runtime of this video. However, in order to keep this season in review about the titular team first and foremost, I opted not to include any interviews from other teams in Season 2 Novice. The main 3 perspectives given will be primarily that of Geometric's players, a little bit from team management, and then a few supplementary pieces of information from League staff. As you'll soon find out, a lot of administrative decisions were made over the course of the season that directly affected the team, and the players themselves didn't always have the full context. If you want a holistic perspective of the Novice division back then, I'd recommend checking out the Sir I made years ago. This one's for Geometric specifically. Cool? Cool. So, to start off the preseason, Tyranitar was chosen as a manager for the Novice division. He had been around since the start of the community, having been a content creator for Season 0 Platchat and a player for Season 1 Rio Redemption. Though he had no real experience running a team, and he was very young at the time, but staff were willing to take a chance and give him a manager spot.
So first of all, I wanted the Rio branding because I didn't really want to create my own branding. So then I realized rotate, revolve, whatever. He took it. So it's kind of lost on what I was going to do for there. But designs actually came in clutch. It saved me with the original branding, which he did himself, which was actually awesome. I love that from him. But prior to draft, I kind of just I don't know. Okay, so I got Colby. So I was friends with Colby around the time. I knew he was knew a lot about the game. He was a lot better than me at the game. Knew what to look at because he's coached before. Knew what to see in players. So I kind of let him do a lot of the scouting because of that fact. So he kind of did the draft, and then I kind of added in my notes players who I thought who stood out to me, and held the private plugs, went to the League Zero hold plugs, and I think we drafted a good roster from the beginning, even without Hanzo.
Take note of that name Tyranitar just mentioned, Colby, because he's going to be showing up a lot during this video. He was brought on as a head coach, but in reality he acted more like an assistant manager. Right away, Colby gave off a bit of a weird attitude when it came to the rules and what he could get away with before getting the team in trouble. He wasn't outright breaking any rules, but it made everyone from the other Novice teams and League staff nervous about what Geometric might try if they got the chance.
If I remember correctly, we basically went, well, it's their choice to do this. Yes, it's really weird that they do this, but if we stop them from doing this, I think we didn't want to set a bad precedent or something. If I remember correctly, in Season 2, we were really worried about setting bad precedents, and so we just kind of didn't do things sometimes, because we're like, oh, we don't want to set a precedent.
From the get-go, it felt like Tyranitar wasn't really sure of how to run his own team, and instead everyone was left dealing with Colby as the de facto head of Geometric. Keep in mind that he wasn't even officially on the team, as he was a player for EasyClap in the Advanced Division, as well as being something of an unofficial coach for Wait What in Intermediate, both of which were problem teams in their own right, and patterns were starting to emerge that basically no one liked what they implied.
he was like, if you don't pick up on, like, it was kind of like really bad. He's like, if you don't pick up Hanzo, like, I'm leaving. It was kind of like that situation, and I didn't really want him to leave, so just kind of let him do whatever he wanted at the. Like, my pickup of Drowsy at the start was, like, it was my first, like, I didn't really know what I was doing as a master, 100%. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. So, like, I knew I wanted to get a captain early, and I, like, didn't really know anyone in novice. So, like, the first pug I show up to, like, he kind of, like, carried his team, like, and was, like, a standout. So, just, like, yeah, you want to be a player, you want to be a captain, you know, that sort of situation. But I think the strategy of, like, seeing it out and then seeing what captain you want, either doing that, like, if you don't know anyone in the league, or having someone you know as your captain is better than what I did.
To be fair to Tyranitar, Drowsy was one of the more impressive flex supports for Novice at the time. There were multiple teams that showed interest in picking him up as a captain if Geometric hadn't so early after manager appointments. That was part of the reason why the rest of Novice were so taken aback by his relegation back into the regular player pool. As for the new captain that Colby insisted on, Hattori Hanzo was suspicious, to say the least. She was a relatively quiet main support who played in very few scouting pugs, yet utterly dominated when she did. Multiple clips of her surfaced, going battle mercy and getting team kills, as well as a variety of complaints from the rest of Novice about the legitimacy of her placement in the division.
My remembrance is, hey, staff was definitely like, and especially me, I think I was one of the driving forces behind this, honestly, was, hey, I totally agree that this team is suspicious, and I'm watching these people play, and I'm like, hey, these people do not look like to be what their SR is. But at the same time, as administration, we had to be very careful about just banning based on bad vibes. You know what I mean? Because that was pretty much all anyone had was, hey, I'm watching this team and they're way better than they should be. And I'm playing against this team and it feels like I'm playing against a Masters player when they say they're gold. And that's obviously a huge difference. But without like actual chat or text or statistical evidence of this, it felt very difficult for me to pull the trigger and be like, hey, these guys are out of here. Because if we just, from my mind, I was thinking, if we ban these people based on just that it feels wrong, then it really opens a can of worms where, hey, you can actually ban anyone if it just feels like they're better than they should be. And that was a can of worms I definitely did not want to open.
Staff were left without enough evidence to ban or force Hattori Hanzo up to a higher division, and frustratingly enough, Tyranitar didn't seem to have any knowledge of what was going on inside of his own team. Skeptical eyes fell on Geometric from all angles in the preseason, and unfortunately, nothing would arise to mitigate those feelings for the time being.
Like, I was like really young. I was like in 8th grade, whatever. Like, I was like oblivious. Like, actually, like completely oblivious the whole time. Like, I did not know what was going on. I was kind of just do your thing, Colby. But I showed up to like pubs, and then she was like actually destroying everyone. So it was like, is this player really good, or are they just like actually? I don't know. Couldn't figure it out at the time.
Despite the bad vibes, Geometric made it through the draft well enough and made out with one of the higher average SR teams compared to their peers. Of course, there was a mix of emotions for the newfound roster, excitement to play, nervousness for their first real tournament experience. Overall, everything went off without a hitch in those opening moments of Season 2.
I remember doing a scrim like in League, and it was like the only scrim we did in League, and we kind of like, I think we domed on them, like we actually like destroyed them. So I was confident. I didn't really like the roster. I felt confident in, right? Because like obviously you feel confident in your players. You think they're gonna be the best. You think you're gonna win. But at the time, obviously like for Hanzo and Stormy. Actually, was Stormy? I don't even know if Stormy was on the team at the time. But Alianos, obviously, I don't know. He did a lot in terms of like doing like kind of the carrying of the team. Hanzo was a flex support. Obviously, she like did a lot, but I saw it more in our like DPS line. And that really stood out to me instead of Hanzo. Like I said, like I literally was oblivious the whole time.
We were called the heel for a reason, though for the most part, the people in like the private space were pretty cool, all things considered. Roughly everyone was pretty chill in the team. You did have, I think it was Stormy, I think was her name, the flex support that was like very standout. And then outside of that, it was mainly Forbes acting as like that core that like kept the group fired up in game.
My first impressions of the team, to be honest, there was not much impressions to be had. You know, I didn't even go to a pug, dude. before the draft, there were some things that came up where I really couldn't be involved into the community. So I had no opinions on either of the teams. But I decided to contact a couple managers and Tyranitar responded back and stuff. And I was like, oh, that's pretty nice. So I guess my impressions of Geometric were that they were risk takers, you know?
As always, a brand new team is going to take a little bit of time to figure out the different personalities and how they fit into the larger dynamic. Regardless of the doubts from those outside, the players of Geometric were really just chilling for the early parts of their season.
It was pretty good. I mean, you know, like, it was my first ever experience playing organized Overwatch, so I didn't really have any, like, standard to base it off of, but it seemed pretty normal. Yeah, I mean, like, we just were doing like normal scrim stuff, and Colby was there a little bit. He was there a little bit at the beginning. Corbs was the very few I remember is like Corbs, because he's a big personality. Other than that, I just felt like it was a pretty normal team when I first joined. I was trying to find my footing, and other than that, it felt pretty normal. And we were still like figuring stuff out, because I initially wanted to play main tank, but then I got stuck on off tank. So that was a pretty big switch for me, I guess, because I was like, oh yeah, like I can play like Ryan and Ursa and all this stuff, and they're like, well, you can play Diva, so you're playing that now. And I was like, all right, I guess.
So when I first got drafted and starting to see my teammates, because I'm pretty sure I got drafted into Geometric round 4. I'm probably wrong on that because it's been a few years, but I'm pretty sure I got into Geometric round 4. So I saw that a lot of the people that did get put into my draft or put onto Geometric, there was Corbs, Churd, Estiazum, Microwave, Xenox, and then there was also Flint, me, Hattori, and Storm. And I thought that we had a really solid team, really just all around we were going to be good. I was prepared to play my heart out, and especially anytime we had me on like a Lucio comp or some other form of rush. So when it came to like Hattori being a Smurf, the majority of us in Geometric, we kind of thought that they were a D ranker, but we didn't have any proof of that type of thing. So we never really thought too hard of it. We just thought they were really good and that they can play Mercy really good and they can sometimes play Moira.
I'm like, well, I got the best support line in the game, not knowing that they were Smurfs at the time. But I was just like, oh shit, you got Storm, you got Hattori Hanzo. Like, I'm not gonna fucking die. I'm so happy. So I get to play as aggressive as I want. And that was pretty much my initial reaction. I knew Alianos was a solid hit scan player despite living in Germany and pretty much playing on ping the entire time. And our DPS line was kind of very good. I think we had Microwave, SDA, and then we had a couple guys who we drafted who were just like gone. So I was pretty much the only main tank player at the time, which hooray, starting time.
Leading up to the first game, no one really knew what to expect from anyone else. Lots of uncertainty, and for Season 2 Novice, this was the first real tournament for a large majority of the players on all teams. Rumors circulated around about how Geometric's first opponents, Rio Redemption, were playing incredibly well in scrims, but scrim bucks can only get you so far.
From what I remember, scrims were going pretty decent, but then again, you know, I was kind of benched through most of the whole time. It's kind of funny. I was like mega benched. They actually told me like, yeah, I think we're just gonna have you be a tracer specialist or something like that. Like, okay. Like, you're pretty good at tracking heroes, but you're not very good at the major hit scans, you know?
Confidence was at a reasonable high for Geometric. Their own scrims were going decent, and the mentality seemed to be stable, all things considered. There was a little bit of roster experimentation going on, but for the most part, the players knew the plan.
I think everyone roughly was pretty confident, all things considered. We thought they were going to be more difficult, but this was Season 2 Rio, so...
I wasn't like, I felt like we've been doing pretty good in scrims, but like I didn't think we were like the best Overwatch team ever. I was more nervous instead of confident, honestly, I guess is a good way to put it, because like it was just the first match like I ever had to play.
Now, after dominating Rio, it came time for the post-match interview. The team took a minute to figure out who would be given the honors before ultimately deciding to let Corbs loose on the broadcast. If you caught what any of the others' first impressions were of him, you'll know this could only end well.
Corbs!
Oh, we're gonna have to get in the production. Yo!
Yo, what's up? Wow, that was some nice play I saw there. I mean, like, you liked going behind them a lot, I noticed.
Oh yeah, no, I'm a big feeder. I'm proud.
Wow, you know, I'm very used to playing with some feeder main tanks.
Oh yeah, no, trust me. Once you get out of silver, they go down drastically. And yeah, with Pineapple's maintained play, I can definitely tell he was hard stuck in silver since season 3.
Oh, I like that. I like that. That's nice. I like that. Anything else you want to say, especially about their off tank?
Yeah, I was about to say, Chef pretty much served me a plate. That's how much he was feeding me. Dorlek, oh my god, he could feed an entire small country. And the only time ATC hit shots on Widow is when we were memeing on him.
I didn't watch it. I tuned out after the interview, and then Corbs was just like, yeah, I called them shit, and I was just like, okay, sure, do whatever you want, your free will. But at the time, I didn't really acknowledge him. I didn't think it would turn into as big of a deal as it was. It's just friendly shit talk, I guess. I'm friends with Rotate, that's actually one of my buds. So I was like, there's no way they'd take it that seriously. But that was just me. I guess they just didn't do scrims with us, which is the main thing, but that's the only fallout I could think of. I'd type in, if you look at the logs, they could just be me looking for scrims in the novice managers group chat and then just getting ghosted every single time. It was kind of absurd, but that was kind of the fallout, I guess. For me as a manager, I don't know what the other managers were thinking, but I was just we'll deal with it. We'll get scrims outside of the leagues, which are probably better because we scrimmed 3.1, 3.2 at the time, which is for a novice team really good, I think. But it didn't affect me that much because I was oblivious and young, but I don't know if it affected the team that much. I think the team was they were chill about everything.
Mostly in Stride, there was me who mostly acted as the intermediary, the one sane quote-unquote GL member that didn't like to be mean or anything, didn't like to be the heel.
No, I think we definitely paid attention to it. I think it was it definitely made us the villains that season, basically since that first game, and then we were the toxic team or just the team to beat. And not to mention all the Storm stuff too did not help any of that. And Hanzo too, all that stuff did not help our case at all as being the toxic team or the villain of Novice that season. But I think it was definitely something we paid attention to, and it was definitely something that our coaches kind of encouraged us to play into, to play confident because everyone's trying to beat us. You're the villain team, so act like it. Just try to run over the other teams and Novice, things like that.
So we initially thought Corbs went way too hard on Rio for as trash talking went, but after the game we were all pretty fueled in dopamine, and so it was in the moment we felt it was necessary, and also we in private we thought it was fucking hilarious because we had planned out if we win we know there's going to be a post match, what should we do, because in the scrims we played we were pretty dominant as most people could tell, and so it was we didn't have much trouble in scrims, so we were yeah, we're probably the best, so we might as well at least try and make sure people know we're the best. And so the whole villain persona came out of Corbs. I mostly just kind of let the villain type of thing go by because during this time I was I'm in the edgy 16, 17-year-old phase of my life where it's I'm perma watching XQC Overwatch streams. I'm constantly fueled by seeing other people tilt because I was a spiteful 16, 17-year-old during that time. And so I thought it was just absolutely hilarious. And knowing that everyone in League Zero's novice division, seeing us as the villain really fueled my drive to make sure that they know I'm better than them.
Oh no, I was trying to do friendly banter. Obviously, a little people got their truffles tickled. I don't know what to say, but yeah, no, a couple people were clearly upset by it, and I'm I mean absolutely zero harm. I just wanted it to be friendly banter because after all, this is a friendly league where we shouldn't go after each other even if they play better than you. After week 1, it started becoming very difficult to find scrim partners inside the league, so we pretty much scrimmed out of the league most of the time, which actually kind of worked towards our advantage. Being seen as villains was pretty cool because even though we had a target on our back, it was still kind of cool having that target on our back, having the teams wanting to beat us, because honestly that could have made us better.
The reaction to the trash talk was pretty much what you'd expect. Rio didn't seem to care too much, but the rest of Novice, oh boy, did they not take that lying down. This, combined with the uneasy feelings surrounding Hattori Hanzo, landed Geometric squarely as the villains for the season.
We didn't really care that much. Like, oh yeah, they're treating us like the villains, whatever. It didn't matter to us that much until playoffs because, it's just competition, you know what I mean? But it really was apparent to us during playoffs that we were hated. It wasn't that obvious to us. From what I remember, we just didn't care. That Colby pretty much got us on that train of like,
For the most part, team was able to drown out the noise about the toxicity, but the growing rumble of questions surrounding the smurfing allegations began to grow too loud to ignore. While the players were very inexperienced when it came to organized teams and tournaments, even they were starting to get the lingering feeling that some of their teammates might not belong in the novice division.
It was just most suspicious thing was Hanzo getting moved up because they were quote unquote too good. That was weird. That was all right, sure. I don't know. That was just a weird moment. It's why are they too good? I think at the end of the day, we had Storm, and I think we had players that were good enough to win anyway. But I think there's really there's nothing we could do about it because I know a big thing was finding proof that Storm was a Smurf. But what were we supposed to do about it? We couldn't prove that thing because a big thing was that people think it might be Colby, but Colby would coach us and Storm would play kind of thing and stuff like that. It's something we definitely knew about, but it was just kind of well, we can't do anything about it. So for right now, please don't get rid of our player.
With Hattori, it was a bit more vocalized. In terms of the Smurf situation, I don't think management brought both of them on knowingly that they were a Smurf, that they just something that happened.
After another dominant performance over Hyperflex in Week 2, the majority of the Novice Division had their fears heard, and staff were left with the difficult task of deciding what to do. As Dividing said before, the admins had no concrete evidence of malicious smurfing. However, there was the possibility that Hattori Hanzo might simply be too good for Novice despite her apparent rank. This gave plausible deniability to the need for any bans, though the discussion on whether to move her up to intermediate or not still plagued the staff channels.
I think Drowsy had mentioned something. I don't remember exactly who brought it up first, but yeah, I think Hattori Hanzo was one of those names that kind of stood out right away because for season 2, that was kind of the first time that I would say League Zero kind of evolved to that next stage, right? Obviously season 1 and season 0 were dramatically different environments, but we did a lot more advertising for season 2, and so with the big influx of people, there were a lot of new faces, and those that stood out really stood out. So I think initially it was kind of oh, this Hattori Hanzo person is good, and then kind of once they got picked up as a captain, there was a lot more focus on them, and people paid a lot closer attention because they were worried about having to go up against them. So I don't remember exactly who brought it up first, but it definitely was several people. It wasn't a single person just kind of said hey, you need to check this person out. I would say with all the Smurf drama that happened in season 2, it definitely made us warier of those kinds of reports in the future. And so we were kind of a lot more suspicious of people who kind of got pointed out to us in the future. But at that point, it was kind of hey, we should just check this out. And whenever we had the opportunity to, we did that. The rule keepers would kind of sit in on games sometimes. Sometimes it was just, hey, we're going to help monitor this game to make sure that, nobody is misbehaving. Other times it was hey, we are checking this person out and we're not telling you that. And then other times it was hey, we're sitting in this game purely so it's not weird when we sit in other games, But so I know I definitely sat in on at least a couple of pugs where Hattori Hanzo was in attendance. They might have been geo-hosted pugs, I don't remember. But yeah, I think our immediate consensus was yeah, this person is definitely good, but I think it got to a point where more staff were kind of sitting in on a review of a VOD. I think a lot of VODs also got sent to us as well. And there were a lot of moments where it was just okay, that was a very bad play, frankly. And being a rule keeper is such an interesting job because you kind of have to question everything while giving people the benefit of the doubt. So the first question in your mind is, okay, are they just a really inconsistent player where sometimes they have these really high peaks and other times they're a much lower tier player? Or are they smurfing and they have these moments where they kind of throw or exaggerate kind of misplays so that it throws the people looking at them off their trail? I think our kind of like initial consensus for the preseason and up until we moved Hattori Hanzo up to intermediate was that, you know, we definitely need to keep a close eye on them, but we're just not 100% sure. Like, we don't want to have to force somebody to play in a different league if we're not 100% sure that they need to. We want everybody to have a good time.
Eventually, staff decided that, despite no immediately obvious evidence of wrongdoing, Hattori Hanzo was performing at a level that wildly outpaced anything that could possibly be construed as a gold player, meaning that she was moved up to the intermediate division. Obviously, losing the best main support in the division hurt the team, but the reaction Geometric gave was mostly reluctant acceptance. They knew there was a good possibility of their captain getting removed from the roster at some point, and they were given the ability to pick up another player from the draft pool to replace her, though to be honest the pick was mostly inconsequential since they had Flintluz sitting on the bench already.
I think Colby kept like everything under wraps. Like, actually, like, he kind of kept everything to himself. I'm looking in the announcement channel, and it's just like, as some of you may or may not know, Hanzo's moving up to intermediate. I'm not going to release the reasoning why, and like, just congratulate her for moving on. But that's like, he kept it under wraps like really well, actually. Didn't really tell me that much either. He was just like, yeah, she's getting moved up. We're just gonna have to deal with it. We'll pick a new captain. We'll get a new main support, and we'll win, I guess.
In all seriousness, though, we felt fine. Flintluz was perfect for us as well. And then Storms transitioned over to off tank, which I found odd. And then we put Alu into the starting lineup, even though I thought Cherd and I were fine.
Corbs was brought in to fill the now vacant captain spot, and the roster was shifted around slightly. Nothing major by this point, but some light swaps were made while they still had some time before facing the other top teams in their division.
It wasn't much of the captain's decision. It was more so it wasn't T-Tar, but it was the other head coach at the time. I don't remember if it was Colby or someone else, but Colby sound familiar. I don't want to say it was him because I don't want to throw unnecessary shade, but it realistically could be him. It's been a minute, but that's what at least I remember.
Obviously, Flintluz had some pretty big shoes to fill, but she was also one of the higher rated main supports in the novice draft, so it's not like she was being thrown to the wolves here. In hindsight, it is kinda crazy how the other teams just let Geometric get away with drafting her in round 5.
I think like we had flashes from a lot of other players. Like, the team was, even without Hans, like the GM level, like I think it was still a really good team with, who's our main tank? Corbs, yeah. Stormy, obviously, well, we don't know. He's really good. Aliano's still, like, really good. Estazome. They were, like... Flintluz was a pretty good player. All in all, like, for novice, like, he did the job. And I think that, like, main support, like, with coaching, we had pretty good coaches at the time. We had a lot of, like, team players on, like, Papega, who I were friends with, and then, like, other players around the league who were kind of doing nothing, coach. And they did a really good job. So I think that also kind of, like, boosted our morale and, like, my confidence in the team.
Roughly, I was the team's, like, macro shot caller. Like, you know how in Overwatch you have the person that's, like, doing the main fight plans before the fight and macro level, ults, all that stuff? That was me. And then outside of that, I just played Lucio and did Lucio things. I wasn't bad at Lucio. I was a main support previously, so it wasn't kind of a foreign thing for me.
Despite her extreme level of play for novice, Hattori Hanzo is always described as very quiet. She would rarely talk with the rest of Geometric, and she definitely wasn't shot calling. So while Flintluz was a mechanical downgrade, in the grand scheme of things, she might have been a better fit given that she was actually making calls. And while there was, of course, an adjustment period, Week 3 was a good match to do it. Platchat was struggling pretty hard by this point in their season, so they were easy pickings for one of the frontrunners like Geometric. A free win for sure, but more importantly a good morale boost.
Yeah, I would say that, like, they were really good, but, like, even, like, without that, we were still able to beat another novice team, and, like, 3-0 is pretty good. You know, who are we to complain that we lost that player if we still had things, like, going well for us?
Now, while we spent all this time talking about Novice's concerns about Hattori Hanzo potentially being a smurf, she wasn't the only cause for concern when it came to Geometric. You may have caught a few people talking about it in some of the interview clips so far, but their flex support, Stormy, also drew suspicion, albeit to a lesser extent than Hattori. While league staff were unsure of how to handle the first set of allegations, Stormy would really throw them for a loop. He was also a very quiet player who sometimes overperformed, though these pop-off moments happened significantly less than they did with Hattori. What's more is that Stormy seemed to be friends with his former captain prior to the start of the season. Circumstantial issues at best, which would become a recurring theme.
So the whole situation between them was always a little bit weird because there were weird like ties between them. I don't really remember everything, but it was like they were friends, had been friends for a little while, but also Stormy was from PS4 while Hanzo was from PC. You know, I don't really remember all the details, but I think what it just came down to is we were a lot more confident that Hanzo belonged in intermediate, whereas we weren't as sure about Stormy, and we had to make that decision of like, is this the right choice that balances everything for both Stormy and the entire novice community as a whole? And we never really like took our focus off, but people also didn't stop coming to us, but they didn't really bring us anything new. It was kind of like, hey, I still think Stormy belongs in intermediate, or that they might be smurfing. Look at our VOD codes from this past week's game or this scrim, you know, and we would review them, but we'd see a lot of the same things we saw before, and so nothing really gave us that level of confidence to be able to say like, yeah, Stormy definitely belongs in intermediate, or, you know, even Stormy is definitely smurfing.
With the perpetual smurfing allegations pinned off to the side until further evidence could either prosecute or exonerate yet another Geometric support player, the team buckled down to prepare themselves for the most hyped match of the season so far, Wisdom Academy. For those of you who haven't had the fortune of being acquainted to the Marsupial gaming crew, Wisdom Academy had a lot of resources since the preseason. While their players were all newbies just the same as Geometric, they were given a small army of coaches and a lot of attention to grow as players. This strategy worked wonders, and they were breezing past everyone to claim the only other perfect record in Novice after 3 weeks. If anyone was going to bring it to Geometric, it was going to be Wisdom.
From this, I think like I felt we were kind of like burnt out a little, and like our team like it was really, really scuffed. Like it was hard to get players on the majority of the time and like play together that much as a team. But when we did also, like it would be like, I think I scrimmed also like too high this week. Like I think like our week of scrims was really not good. And so that's kind of like all of that added together, plus Wisdom being a really good team, like added to this culmination, just like getting smacked. But we still had hope, like we were still 3-1, right? Like that's really good. Second best team in the league, like handedly, I think. So we still had hope, and like it was kind of like a reset moment, and we added more coaches. We added 4 at that time, I think. So it was a look at the team, reset, and then let's go try again.
I mean, honestly, I would probably say we were overconfident considering we were 3-0, and we were like, we got this, it's fine. Like you're gonna run them over. That because we had run other people over, we're like, no, it'll be easy. And then we're like, wait a minute, these guys are actually good. Like, what happened? Yeah, so kind of like with that villain role thing, we were just like, yeah, like they hate us because they ain't us kind of deal, like, you know.
The game was a stomp, and not in Geometric's favor. 3-0, in and out, goodbye, good night. Geometric themselves took the loss reasonably well. I mean, they didn't self-destruct, so there's that. But at the same time, playing the villain for 3 weeks straight definitely ensured they were in for a world of hurt when that first loss finally came knocking.
We pretty much just ignored it and huddled up. There was like Orbs who decided to like talk counter smack, but for the most of us, we just kind of huddled up.
Just losing to Wisdom. I was okay with the trash talk because, like, again, I don't really care about banter. It's a friendly league. We're all here to do the same thing and improve. But losing sucks, and especially to a team that pretty much if you beat, it would solidify your number 1 position.
There's a few different reasons as to why Geometric fell so hard against Wisdom, and as we've already discussed, their opponents were supremely well prepared, though Tyranitar brought up an interesting point that I hadn't heard from anyone else during the interview process.
Yeah, like, I'm looking at my announcements, and it's like, did I even, like, schedule scrims? Like, I wanted to, like, I tried to, but, like, I'd ping every day and be like, nope. We'd have, like, 4 thumbs ups and, like, 7 thumbs downs. Be like I'm trying my best here, guys. Like, I don't know. And it's kind of bad because like we had players that were like perma-active, but some were like Aliano's like, I don't understand how we like played every day. Getting up at 2 a.m. is like, I don't know.
The lack of proper practice, as well as a short blurb Alianos gave me through text, seems to paint a fairly complete picture of what happened. Geometric's players felt supremely confident, having not dropped a match after nearly a month of playing together. This bred some amount of complacency. Of course they were going to beat Wisdom. Why wouldn't they? No one got close to testing them thus far. This lack of challenge led Geometric to get almost halfway through the season without a ton of team building. They were relying very heavily on raw mechanics. It's almost poetic that Wisdom was just about the polar opposite. Unfortunately for Geo, they weren't given any time to rest, because their next opponents were another top contender, and arguably their biggest rivals in the entire division, One Trick Wonders. What transpired was a grueling Map 5 series where OTW eked out the win by the skin of their teeth. There was some more vitriol thrown Geometric's way, however the band-aid was already ripped off the week before, so things calmed down much faster this time.
Well, I personally took it as static because by this point I had basically been perma bench ridden, except for like game ones on 2CP or control, whichever ended up being the first map pool, because I was pretty solidly a bench rider, which I didn't like, especially because Stormy never showed up to scrims. It was like, I personally didn't see it much, but I know other people in Geometric didn't take it too awful well. Can't remember any names specifically, but yes, I know some people really weren't happy with how much we were getting shit talked, despite of how easily we destroyed them in scrim and both in game. We felt really beaten about it, but we also accepted at the same time that we did put on the best showing we could. And especially knowing that OTW was really good, it's like we couldn't beat ourselves too much about it, but because it was such a close loss, we were reeling from it for a little bit.
The players reacted to the close loss in a few different ways. Some were devastated by snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Others felt hopeful given how close the series was against another good team.
I think they took it really well. Like in this chat, I see we didn't have a coach. I think we lost because of cheese comps. Like they played like Bastion or whatever, and it's like it wasn't like they weren't better than us. They were just, we didn't have a coach. We didn't, like, it's novice players. We don't know how to like respond to a Bastion cheese comp. And so we were like, this is like kind of a fluke loss. Like this, we should do better and come back against weaker opponents next in the following weeks.
Minor correction there on what Titar said. OTW didn't play Bastion yet. Don't worry, we'll cover the Bastion comp later in the season, but for now they were still playing the meta May Reaper composition pretty much 24/7. More importantly, this mid-season period is where pretty much all the players I talked to agreed Geometric hit their slump. They began experimenting more aggressively with the roster, different compositions, and just about anything else that could gain back the magic they had at the start.
Yeah, we did pick up 4 around there. We got benched for the rest of the season, so that was fun. But he was a great addition. Yeah, AluV2 wanted out because him and Corbs did not get along at all. Was a pretty big reason that he wanted out of the team. Map 5 loss to a team that we probably should have beat, and then it was just, we got to shake stuff around.
So this is actually a topic I wasn't super familiar with prior to researching for this video. But yeah, there was a little bit of beef surrounding AluV2 and Corbs around this time in the season. In hindsight, it does clear up some of the weird roster experiments they had at the time.
Pretty much AluV2 just saw me as like a bad leader and whatnot, and that really just pissed them off. And then obviously for the next game, Rio, I was benched for them going into that. That's how Rio got their first map win in League 0.
Banter aside, Corbs also admitted that he was getting pretty boomed over the back-to-back losses, and the team wanted to get their main tank situation figured out. While they were able to defeat Rio and Hyperflex for a second time, those weren't really the teams they were gunning for revenge against.
So, to get me on main tank, I basically, this is when I started personally trying to get off of Geometric because I got tired of Corbs. And I don't mean to say that in a bad way now, because looking back on it, I've grown as a person. I shouldn't have been so vehemently angry towards Corbs, but I was, once again, the edgy 16, 17-year-old that I was. It was I wanted to get away from Corbs specifically, and if it meant I had to leave Geometric, so be it. Because during this week, the week prior, I had just scrimmed with Rio because I was planning on just going over there. Because I was going to quit Geo, hold the 2-week penalty of quitting Geo, and then get signed on to Rio and hopefully turn them around. Talked it over some with Alianos, because Alianos was starting to get promoted through Geometric to be team captain, whatnot. So I'm talking with him, and Alianos just tells me, bro, as good of a player as you are, you probably shouldn't go to Rio because otherwise you're going to be forever known on the winless season. Even then, Alianos was predicting the winless season. So I took that to heart, and I was like, yeah, you know what? Fair enough. I took the sub in on main tank to hopefully just outperform Corbs, in game, so that way I can take over. And then if I had taken over, in the scrims that we played with me on main tank, I could tell that the general vibe of the team was much better, I guess. At least that's how my memory sees it. And so it's like, we may not have been as good as when we had Corbs on main tank, but when I was on main tank, the majority of our players were like, we weren't tilting or anything. We were able to play at least sound enough to fall high tier in under like scrim rankings and whatnot.
It became pretty obvious pretty fast that Alu wasn't going to take the starting main tank spot away from Corpse, so he began requesting to be traded away. Eventually, Hyperflex agreed to trade for Golden Pants just after the two teams faced in Week 7. From the outside, this was a pretty funny trade given that both teams were just swapping benched flex supports for one another, but generally speaking, these moves were made more to keep everyone happy as opposed to adding some level of strategic depth to their starting lineups.
So when I went from Geo to Hyperflex, there was a little period where I had already been trying to get traded to Hyperflex, even the week prior. Like before our game with Hyperflex, I was trying to get traded over there because of my issues with Corbs. And when I had asked coaches about it, they didn't want me to go over there because they only wanted to use me as trade bait at that point, at least from what I felt. They wanted to use me as trade bait because they really, really wanted Little Puppy. They just absolutely wanted Little Puppy so badly because Little Puppy was unbelievably diffing every main tank, despite being on at the time lackluster Hyperflex. So when I eventually did get traded over to Hyperflex, I was just mad shit talking Geometric about it. It's like, oh my god, I can't believe they finally let me trade over and whatnot. And so going into scrims with Hyperflex, I didn't get too awful much playtime in scrims and in game, but with the scrims that I did play in, it was a very refreshing experience. So after I got traded to Hyperflex, I became like the number one Drowsy instigator. Stormy instigator. Anytime we play Geo and Scrim, I'm like, oh, so where's your Smurf? Where's your Smurf? And then anytime I did get to play against Stormy or whatnot, I made sure that I put on my D1 game face to just try and show him, like, yeah, this dude is smurfing and I'm still better than you. That's all I wanted. I just wanted to basically spite Geometric because it's like, I know I'm better and I know I deserve the game time, so I'm going to try my best to prove it to him, and this is kind of how it went.
Geometric, I didn't really know much about Geometric when I was still on Hyperflex. After I took a hard loss early on in the season against Plat Chat, I believe it was, I started like pulling away from Hyperflex. And the only thing that I knew throughout the season, after I started pulling away, was that the most toxic team in the league was Geometric. And I was like, shit, I'm being traded here. I was just a bit annoyed because I'm like, I don't want to be on toxic team. This just is not the vibe I'm going for. But I somehow managed to secure a spot specifically working with Flint as the other support. I knew quite a few people on the team, specifically the coaches, Colby, Copydog, Kizgo, and Great Cub. I also knew Tyranitar a bit from a different time, so I was surprised that the team was not actually as toxic as I expected.
On top of the Hyperflex trade, a few other things happened around this time. For one, Corbs decided it would be best if he stepped down as captain to just focus on playing the game. This left Alianos to step in as the third captain in Geometric's lineage. While he is from Germany, at the time, the Hitscan player was also basically living in the same time frame as someone from North America, so he was, ironically, one of the most active and responsive captains in the entirety of Novice that season. The last major change Geometric made around this time was picking up Silent Sword as a main tank. He was an undrafted player who participated in a few smaller community tournaments like Snowball Cup and the Tournament of Kings Row, so at the bare minimum he knew how organized team play was supposed to work.
I was warned about Corbs and how he was. I never had a problem with Corbs. Me and Corbs were always chill. We were friends for like a little bit afterwards, after the season ended. And then there was Churd, who was the off tank I spent probably the most time with on the team. We queued ranks so much during that season. And right when I joined, he was very friendly. I think he was one of the first people to welcome me to the team. So those were like kind of the two standout players outside of the ones I knew.
Pretty much immediately, Silent Sword earned his place as the starting main tank, and Corb seemed happy enough to take the bench if it meant that the team could win more games.
For sure. And it wasn't always that way, Corbs was a very good eater as well. It's just, I guess, all the toxic... I wanted to say that it didn't get to us, but I think it did get to some of us, and Corbs was one of those people that it got to.
Silent Sword brought a certain amount of level-headedness to the main tank spot, while also managing to hype up the rest of the team and keep them focused on the main goal, winning. I could go more in depth, but I think their testimonies speak for their new leader more than I ever could.
I think Silent Sword played in like Snowball or Flux or whatever. I don't know the other Toker, one of the other leagues, and he was playing with like Diamond players, like Plat Diamond players, and holding his own. So we were just like, this guy's really good. If he's a novice, like we have to pick him up and we have to play him because he's just better than everyone else in the league. So that's kind of like our feeling throughout why we started him.
Immediately his impact was known. From what I recall, Silent Sword and I were like, I think I was the one who mentioned Silent Sword. I could be wrong about that. Him and I were like decent buddies, and he did participate in, I think he participated in the novice scrims, just kind of didn't get picked up. He didn't really participate, but he like did the Rex. But he's an amazing guy. All the praise that the other teammates sang about them, it rings true here.
I think we definitely retracted that villain role. Corpse is a big part of that. He was like very involved in the community and like trash talking and stuff. So Silent Sword coming in like late in the season, not really being involved with that was a pretty big shift of like us just kind of putting our nose to the grindstone for a bit. Like Golden Pants getting in there was also like Alu wasn't ever part of that, but you know, Alu leaving the team, Golden Pants getting there, just shaking up some of the like roster kind of helped like change our mindset or really just like focus on trying to make that new roster work.
So pretty much I would focus on heroes that were not Reinhardt for tank, and then he would focus purely on Reinhardt. But yeah, no, it was like I was pretty much the main tank that was not the Reinhardt player now. So even though Ryan was pretty much hard meta in Novice because no one else knew how to play characters with skill. Just look at the results. Even though, yeah, sure, there were some growing pains, especially when he slept in against Wisdom for the second time. I'm not even kidding. I was supposed to be on main support that week, but guess not. So we were pinging him, trying to wake him up.
Of course, joining any new team midway through the season is going to come with unique challenges compared to being drafted, even more so when that team is geometric. There's a lot of baggage that goes along with joining the, quote, villains of Novice.
So I didn't know about it before joining, but when I joined, I saw it. At the beginning, I was like, oh, I'll play into the villain then, because, you know, I like playing like into certain situations. Even though I'm a pretty chill person, I don't like to cause problems, so I was not really shit-talking anyone, really. But, like, I wasn't going to be, like, very nice to everyone right away. But later on that it went on, probably, like, right before, like, the OTW game, I think, was when I was like, okay, the villain role is not good for the whole team, and we need to stop it. It didn't come from any one team. There was definitely teams that, you know, hated Geometric more, understandably. But I think the only team that didn't truly, like, despise Geo was Hyperflex. And, like, Rio was pretty chill, but that's just because Rio was just trying to, you know, be Rio and try to get their first win. Outside of that, it was just, like, the top teams didn't like Geometric for understandable reasons, because there was the Hattori Hanzo Storm situation. There was Corbs being just a jerk to everyone. It made sense. But most of the time, Geometric just kind of, outside of Corbs, just kind of stayed in their own little bubble. And if, like, people want to interact with us, we would interact with them. But if, like, they just want to start shit, we just kind of stayed in our bubble.
We already covered how Silent Sword clicked pretty well with the rest of the starting lineup. However, there was, of course, an adjustment period to properly get into the swing of things. The rematch against Platchat was their first match with the new main tank, and as it turns out, this was not going to be as much of a free win as it was back in Week 3. Platchat had transformed quite a bit during the mid-season signing window, and they were beginning to hit a hot streak of their own. Given the circumstances, it's hard to say just how good Platchat had become, but Geometric had essentially chalked this matchup as a loss from the start. They didn't care as much about the outcome, as much as getting out of their rut in time for the upcoming grudge matches versus Wisdom and OTW.
That one felt more winnable to me. And the first time we played versus Wisdom, you know? I wasn't there. So it kind of felt, it's like if you get cut and you don't have a band-aid and you just have to watch yourself peed out. It felt terrible. But the second time around, I was there and I could do something, so it felt more winnable for me. And I'm pretty sure I went in as tank that game at one point, which is crazy. I felt it was winnable. We just didn't win.
The Wisdom rematch didn't go their way once again, though Geometric did manage to steal a map away before going down. Not too shabby considering Silent Sword slept through the game. Makes you wonder how close it could have been, but there's no point in getting hung up on what-ifs.
I'm still upset by the Wisdom game. I slept through the Wisdom game. Yeah, that's why I wasn't playing it. I played in the final map. I slept through the other two maps because I was so tired. I fell asleep and I woke up late. I was like, shit. But yeah, we really wanted to beat Wisdom there to not give them their first win, or like their you know, give them their perfect season. We want to stop that. I slept through it, and then I think in that final map we played really well. When I was there, I thought we played really well, but it's just Wisdom was really good. Even if you took out what Time did in that game, because but even if you took out what he did, I still think they probably would have won that game because Wisdom played amazingly. They played two of their strong suits with that bans that happened that week, and they just shoved it into us. OTW we wanted to beat because of their comp. It sucks that on that week we didn't have Reinhardt, because I remember that, because I was like, oh, we'll just run Ryan into them. We'll just run them down. We legit had to swap our whole plan to Orisa run it down. But yeah, both of those teams we were like, we really want to beat so we can get a higher standing and not be lower down. And just because they were counted as the best teams in Novice at the time, we were like, we're going to beat that. We're going to win this. We're gonna show them that the villains in the redemption arc are going to be doing what we can do to prove that we deserve to be the winners. We deserve to be in the playoffs. We deserve to beat every other team.
So the team mentality was we scrimmed just as hard. We only scrimmed against teams that we told beforehand, hey, could you run this specific comp? And if I remember, it was nicknamed OTW comp, which was Orisa Sig, Bastion, Pharmacy, BAP. But they ran that comp every single time in scrims. It led to us a lot of teams not really wanting to scrim them because of the fact that's all they ever did was run that one specific team comp. And it made it so annoying to scrim against them. It was just cheese. And it pissed a lot of people off on our team because we played what we believe to be normal non-cheese comps. And then a team that has the same exact record as us is just running Bastion, Mercy, lol.
Okay, time to talk Bastion. In the later portions of Season 2, for some godforsaken reason, One Trick Wonders decided to force the walking turret into every single situation possible. They started to fall behind when it came to the regular meta, and the coaches on OTW figured novice teams wouldn't be able to counter it. To an extent, they were right, because OTW stayed as one of the top teams throughout the remainder of the season. But at the same time, they were also wrong, because it ended up kneecapping them when Bastion actually did get countered. As Golden Pants mentioned there, most teams in League didn't want to scrim One Trick purely because they wouldn't play meta. And here's some insider info for you from the staff chats back in Season 2. We actually got approached by a few teams and organizations outside of the community about one of our teams, quote, trolling in the scrims and refusing to swap off their cheese cobs. I'll give you one guess as to who that was. Funny story aside, the One Trick rematch was another 5-map banger, except this time Geometric managed to squeeze out the win. After a few weeks of turbulent results and a lot of uncertainty, Geo was ecstatic to finally be putting up good performances again.
For me, I didn't realize the criticism that much. I was just it's OTW. They're a pretty good team. They're above us. If we beat them, we'll be pretty good getting in. So for me, it was just another game. That was if we win, our momentum's there. We'll be happy. If we have we'll continue to improve and we can ride the wave for playoffs, I guess.
That was a pretty big turnaround for us. It felt like we kind of got our footing. That it was okay, we're back. We're getting into playoffs, and we're starting off in a win. We can maybe keep some momentum going to get into into playoff, and keep a streak going, see how far we can get.
Geometric made it through the regular season with a 6-4 record, which technically tied them with OTW in terms of win-loss. However, the latter had a much better map differential, so Geometric were stuck in 3rd place. This was somewhat significant because the top 2 teams were given a bye straight to the semifinals, though Geometric's opponents in the quarterfinals were the winless Rio Redemption.
We were prepping for every team, so in the weeks we had, I don't know how much time it was, we were prepping for every team in case we had to fight any other team. We played against Rio and Hyperflex probably the most in our script times, outside of just outside opponents, but in league opponents, we played against probably those two a decent amount. When we got into that game, and even beforehand, I had to everyone was getting, including me for instance, but everyone was keep on getting too hyped, oh yeah, we got this. Me and a lot of other people had to keep on reminding people, hey, we can still lose this. It's Rio. They're not a bad team. They're just kind of falling a little bit short on all of these games. We can't let them bring it back. So we had to prepare for them, because if you don't prepare for a team, that's when they get you.
A cautious mentality going against Rio in the quarterfinals was the smart move, even if it ended up being unnecessary in the grand scheme of things. Even with a main tank of their own who ended up being a diamond smurf, Rio hit about as hard as a wet noodle when push came to shove.
Yeah, it was just it's Rio. We're not gonna try that hard this week. as a manager, I was like, if we scrim like 2-3 times or like 1-2 times to stay like active or whatever, like we'll be fine in going into this game. And then after, I remember like our Discord kind of merged, and then like the people on Rio who like Revolve were close with kind of just like joined our team chat and such. And it was just like kind of boosted our morale, made the environment not as isolating, and was like pretty good for us, I'd say. And they give us like some inside info on like OTW or whatever too, like scouting like that.
We were more focused on the semifinals because honestly, Rio had a lot of scrim books against us, but we beat them every time we played them in a match. They played well in scrims all the times, but I don't know what happened like match-wise that they just couldn't make it work. I don't think we were too worried about it. We were definitely mainly focused on trying to get to OTW and maybe probably get to finals because at that point, like those Wisdom games, and especially like, you know, talk about it for the finals, but like quite the long-standing rivalry between us and marsupial teams.
Despite Curb stomping them out of the season for good, Rio was arguably the one team that didn't vilify Geometric. Likely due to Tyranitar and Drift being former teammates on Season 1 Rio, they were the one team you could say was actually friendly to Geo despite all the drama.
We were close with Rio, but I don't know if it was highlighted about like how we were focused on OTW over Rio, but we really were just focusing on that Rio quarter.
So, with the newfound power of friendship, Geometric ended out their season with no more drama whatsoever, and they all lived happily ever after. The end. Good night. What? Semifinals? I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, do we really have to? We could just end it here. They'd be none the wiser. No? Alright. When it comes to Season 2, we have a rule not to talk about it. However, for the sake of this video, and to be as complete as possible, this will be the one and only time we talk about I need you all to understand just how much of a clusterfuck this night was. This is every tournament organizer's worst nightmare. And I think instead of rambling on forever, I'm going to let the players do that. I asked every single one of them the exact same question. What the hell happened?
Let's take it map by map. I think that's the only right way to do it. I think it was Lijiang first. The first map was relatively normal. I think what happened was OTW won the first map. We were kind of like getting a bit annoyed because there was a bit of trash talk going around. And then the second map was where the first disconnect happened. We kept the first map's like track record and we just played the other two maps, right? And then King's Row. So we started on the attack. We didn't get to the end. Like, we got, like, within 2 meters to the end, but we didn't, like, complete the map. So it was like, their offense was our last, like, chance, really. They steamrolled through first and second point. They had 5 minutes on the time bank. And the game went by. 4 minutes left. We won the fight. 3 minutes left. We won the fight. 2 minutes, crash. And there was like this giant ass discord over who the fuck was going to win that fight. Because it was going like, oh, we had the man advantage. Oh, but like Flintless had beat. We were going to beat there. All kinds of shit show about who would win that fight. But that wasn't even the part that mattered. What mattered was, due to the disconnects, we were already running like, I think it was an hour and a half, 2 hours into that match. So we were like, okay, guess we gotta do this next time. And then OTW was like, our players are starting to get tired and all that stuff. We agreed on both ends to do it tomorrow.
I think first 2 maps went fine. King's Row is when like we like almost capped or whatever, and then we had to restart, right? And so we were just like, are we gonna play? Are we gonna keep playing with this? Is this how our season's gonna end? And then we knew before that Stormy was gonna have to like leave whatever early. So we were like, okay, this is kind of like fucked. Like if we lose and like if our best player doesn't get to play like or the last 4 maps because of this glitch, it's just like, okay, why? Like there's no way like our season ends like that.
Going into the game, right? You know, everything was normal. Map 1, everything was normal. We were like, okay, we can win this game. They won map 1, and we were not doing good on momentum side. We were kind of hitting a brick wall. So we tied on Anubis. The momentum is still not going our way. Then King's Row. I think They had 5 minutes. We had already reduced their time, and then the servers just cut the fuck out, right? So we're like, okay. And then the call was made for them to get 5 minutes on the clock going into that. And I was thinking in my head, what? Why would they get 5 minutes? I was so boomed at that point. I was like, what? I did not understand. I feel like everything was going against us at that point because they had an extra 5 minutes. We held them for a while, I think. But point being is, we got through that. We actually held them for the 5 minutes, and we won that map. But I know Colby was telling us stuff. He's like, they think they're gonna cancel the game because of all the DCs, this and that. And then Corbs was like, oh yeah, I gotta go. My grandma needs help or something like that. And it was already pretty late for me too. So we were all having this conversation of it. If this game keeps playing out the way it is, if it's another 3-2, it might be too young for some people. So we're like, okay, maybe we should just reschedule this. We're 1-1. We could just finish the game another day. So we all were like, yeah, let's do that. We told Colby, can we try to reschedule?
I don't know, okay? I was like on the bench. I had no idea what was going on. Okay, the big events that I remember that were really, like, it was a pretty standard match up until King's Row. King's Row is where everything went wrong, because the server kept crashing. We tried to settle on some sort of, like, thing where they would, like, push to third, and then we'd wait till when the clock stopped to start playing again, but that didn't end up happening. And then, you know, OTW were our biggest haters back then. And then I just kind of turned into, like, us trying to figure it out. It got a bit heated. And apparently, like, as far as I know, everyone just started yelling at Tyranitar about it for some reason.
Server closed due to unexpected error. Server closed due to unexpected error. Server closed due to unexpected error. We were just upset the servers were crashing. We pretty much talked it out with OTW, like, hey, can we push the game back a little bit, like, to tomorrow, so that way the small indie company can actually fix their servers. Turns out they said yes at first, and then they changed their mind without consulting us. When they made Tyranitar cry, it was over for them, straight up.
For some reason, after that game, when it was already postponed, all of OTW was still sitting there, and every one of my team members got off, and I was still sitting there. I don't know why I was still sitting there. It was just like, I felt something. I was like, I don't really want to leave. So I just sat there for the next bit, and Tyranitar comes back saying, we're continuing the game. They have forced our hand into playing the game. We're forfeiting.
Now, you know how I mentioned Silent Sword really showing into his own, lighting a fire under us? This was his moment. Now, one thing you should know about Silent Sword, he is incredibly chill. Like, you have to work hard to get him pissed off. Now, OTW pissed Silent Sword off. He was livid. He was livid at all of it. Livid at the decision to bring us all back into a scuffed-ass roster. Livid at the fact that y'all essentially decided to make us replay the entire third point with a restarted match bank. So we ended up playing like 8 minutes total of round of third point King's Row. We held it for 8 minutes. And a lot of that has to do with Silent Sword just straight up not giving a fuck anymore. He was just not giving any respect to the enemy team and just throwing shatters left and right that map. We won that map.
Then we had to play the most random lineup we could get at the time because that's all we could get back. Well, I was like screaming because I was mad that like we had to bring back people back that legit had to go do things. So I was like very angry. So like it was very obvious in that final game, like final map, where I was just like one of my favorite line, and a line that keeps getting said to me even by like my close friends, is herping Yoshi is a better main tank than you. After that point, we were just running high on emotions, trying to like show them that like it was not a smart decision. You should have just waited for that extra minute to bring us back. That's all I remember from that game.
And that moved us into, I think it was Route 66, that we ended up having to forfeit because Colby was a dumbass and decided to speak during the midpoint of a round, and we had like a coach recording and watching our POV. And I think he said something along the lines of, no, the comp is like May Ass or something, not May Reaper or something. But that was enough to straight up give OTW the point, which meant we went to a map 5.
I also saw a lot of things about Colby specifically unmuting on Route 66. It's one thing to do it once and be like, hey, first mistake. but he did it earlier in the season. Again, like earlier in the season when we played One Trick Wonders, he unmuted and was talking as well, and he was berated by a staff member. I don't remember, but somebody came in and told him to mute up, and he muted, like showed, and then at the time where it matters most, he just says something in chat and costs us the map win. It was agonizing, and the whole entire chat was just in chaos because, you know, there's no shot I would have put any money on Geometric to win that game when I saw what exactly we had to go through.
And then we got rule bucked on Route 66. And this is where my hatred for Piachat begins. Because they got involved, you know? It's like, this is an OTW versus Geo match. And it wasn't really that. It was a Geo versus the world match. And Piachat was like one of the front runners, you know what I mean? All because of one little text message that Kobe put in the chat. But it kind of felt like it was too much of a technicality, you know? So then we go down that map, and you know, our fire just became even more.
Map 5 was Oasis, and we steamrolled Oasis. And then map 6 came along. We steamrolled Nepal. All of us were hooting and hollering in that VC. I was the one that was relatively calm, but even then I was starting to get swung into it. And by the end, something Silent Sword said just kind of cemented it all. This was what cultivated us into the finals. We came, we saw, we conquered.
Okay, so that was obviously a lot to digest. Let me break it down into a simpler timeline. First map, Lijiang Tower. OTW managed to take an early lead in the series. Second map, Temple of Anubis, dragged out forever before eventually ending in a draw. Classic 2CP. Third map, Kings Row. A huge amount of server errors created one of the most scuffed matches in League Zero history, but in the end, Geometric managed to claim the win. 3 maps down and about 2.5 hours into the series, the scoreline was 1-1 in a first to 3. Every other time these two teams faced, they went to map 5. Geometric talked things through with the players of OTW, and the players agreed they all wanted to reschedule the remainder of the series to the next day. Important thing to note, One Trick Wonder's management was not present in the lobby at the time of these discussions. Geometric as a whole believed the reschedule was set in stone and sent their players off for the night, while OTW's management just caught wind of what was happening and demanded the game be continued immediately. Eventually, the demands were met, and Geometric were forced to field a roster to close out the series. Just like I said in the editor's note a few minutes back, we don't have any official archive of this series past map 3. And to be honest, that might be a blessing in disguise. Anyways, fourth map, Route 66. Colby ends up typing in match chat about what composition Geometric should be playing, which is considered illegal mid-match coaching, which caused the map to automatically count as a win for OTW. As per the rules in Season 2, the remainder of the series was to be played out on control maps until one team wins. Fifth map, Oasis. If Geometric were pissed before, Route 66 made them seething mad. Pure rage fueled them through the exhaustion, and they hard swept to take everything to one final map, Nepal. I think you get the picture by this point. So, with all of that out of the way, you might be wondering to yourself, how the hell did things get this screwed up? A fair question, one that can really only be answered from the perspective of League staff.
I don't remember specifics, but I remember that we just did our best to resolve the situation in a way that everybody found amicable. It's another kind of example about, min-maxing everybody's not only fun, but like acceptance for how things are running. In hindsight, it's easy to say like, oh, well, this miscommunication should have never happened. And, there should have been more confirmation with like the management. And, I would agree. But once you find that yourself in that situation, you want to get both sides' input for what would be the most amicable. You don't want to just say like, oh, well, you agreed to reschedule and you should have been more vocal that like you weren't rescheduling. And you don't want to be like, oh, well, yeah, you agreed to play today. It is one of those situations that causes additions to the rulebook. And honestly, I'm surprised we didn't add some kind of section that says like, if a game goes past X amount of time, it can optionally be rescheduled. At least as from what I remember, we didn't add that. But yeah, I think there was that issue of like One Trick wanted to play then and said we didn't actually agree to a reschedule, and Geo's like, well, we already told our people they were free to go and we don't have anybody here. And obviously you don't want like a finals match to just be given by like default or forfeit. That sucks. So I don't remember exactly how we got there, but we agreed that it would continue on that night, and I think Geo managed to get enough people. Yeah, and they still won, which I think speaks to their power as a team that season, Smurfs or not. I think what it did come down to was a call from Dividing of just the guy who has to make the call. Because I think what it came down to is, like, at the end of the day, staff weren't really sure what to do either. And it came down to two things. One was just like everyone saying, like, well, I'm not sure what to do. Who's in charge of me? Oh, Dividing. What do you think? And I think his decision was just to play out the match. And I think part of his decision to do that was the other thing, which was the rulebook. The rulebook, like I mentioned, didn't have a specific clause for rescheduling the second half of a match at a later date. And I think we ended up just going by the rulebook because, One Trick's management had never agreed to reschedule. It was kind of like a non-confirmed verbal agreement by, some players. And because of that, that's what we ended up doing.
I was definitely directly involved in the decision making that happened in that game. I don't remember if I was casting or streaming or if I was just like the person that was online at the time. I honestly don't remember. But I definitely remember I was pretty actively involved in trying to figure out the best possible thing. Like already, like Geometric, like Kings Row had to get reset, and they felt like they had been slighted by the resolution that was come to. And again, One Trick Wonders OTW was like the team that was the most actively and like had the most animosity towards Geometric because of their smurfing. But I also believe that most of the Geometric team did not believe so, and also us as staff had like shot down like, hey, we don't have proof so many times that at that moment it was like, oh my gosh, give it a rest. You know what I mean? But that was kind of the emotional state at that point, was just like, oh my gosh, will you shut up about this? Here's my memory, and I'll maybe it contradicts what other people say, but here's my memory of what happened. My memory is that Geometric had so many people leave that they said, we don't have enough people to stay anymore. We have to leave. This game is going too long. Can we reschedule? One Trick Wonders had a couple of people who had time issues as well, but I do think the management of One Trick Wonders in particular was like, hey, we still have enough people to play. We want to play. Well, very specifically being like telling staff like, we do not consent to a reschedule. We want to play now. And I don't know. And it probably, they definitely did not have enough the players to like play optimally, but they had 6 players in the server, and that's what they were doing. They were just sitting in the server. All of Geometric had left, and One Trick Wonders sat in that server for, I want to say, like 90 minutes saying, we refuse to reschedule. We are going to play now. And according to the rules, if Geometric cannot play right now, they are disqualified. And that was, I think, the rock in a hard place. Because I, obviously, as staff, wanted to be like, hey, if Geometric has IRL things, go ahead. If One Trick Wonders is absolutely refusing to, though, then the rules do technically state that if you don't have enough players to play, then you just lose.
Minor correction on Dividing there. It was only about 45 minutes between the call to reschedule and the official call to continue. But the sentiment pretty much remains unchanged. Geometric left the lobby for the first time around 10:30 p.m. Eastern, and everyone was forced back into the lobby right around 11:15. Once One Trick's management learned of the supposed reschedule, they joined the team management voice chat alongside every other novice team besides Geometric to petition staff to continue the series immediately. Though, to be fair, Rio was advocating in favor of Geo, and from what I've heard, Hyperflex kept a pretty neutral stance. OTW, Wisdom, and Platchat for sure were all very much against Geometric in this case. And I don't want that to sound like they're suddenly the villains here, though I'm sure they came off that way to Geometric. Technically speaking, they were just going by the rules.
I kind of remember, I think it was someone on Geo, I don't remember who, basically went, well, actually, we think we should win because their player can't continue. So the servers are back, so we want to play now. And the fact that their player can't continue isn't our issue. Like, you should set it up so that you can play because it's possible that this game would have gone past 11 no matter what.
They basically chose that moment to try and make a full rise against the staff of being like, hey, Geometric, we feel, has been unacceptable, and they should be disqualified. While not every captain and manager was actively advocating for it and like saying anything in chat. I do remember a majority of the novice managers and captains were in chat and were like, you know, by doing that, kind of offering their approval of what was being said. No, I think it was everyone except Geometric in that chat, and maybe one other team, like maybe. Oh man, I don't remember who. There was one other team that wasn't actively participating. But a majority of them, yeah, I don't think anyone from Geometric was there. It was a majority of the staff from the other novice teams, except for one other team, that was in that chat all at once, basically saying we think Geometric should be disqualified. My take was Tyranitar has been one of the more dedicated and active people in League Zero for a long time. And I know that Tyranitar was not aware of any wrongdoing that was being done by Geometric at the time, and was just trying his best to run this team the best that he could. And basically every other novice team came out together in, and you know, like this had kind of been the feeling that Geometric had had a lot for a long time, where it was like, it's us versus the world, everyone hates us as a team. But that day was like when it was really, really obvious, like literally, like, they sat there and watched most of the other novice teams advocate against them for this game. Yeah, I think at that moment, all of the frustration that Tyranitar had been feeling about being like ostracized from the rest of the novice community, it just like really boiled over in that moment. It really felt awful because at that point, you know, my goal in League Zero is to make sure that people had a good experience playing in their teams. And here was this person who is probably the most emotional conversation I've ever had with someone in League Zero, that came off the back of multiple months of feeling ostracized from the community. It really sucked. I remember while he was doing it, like having to get up, like I still had my headphones on, but I had to get up, like walk away from my computer and just like lay face down on my bed because my thought was like, we have failed this person and we have failed this team.
What Dividing was referring to at the end there is that when staff had made the deliberation to continue, Tyranitar was dragged into a private voice channel alongside OTW's manager Ace Flash to explain how everything was going to go down. This is when T-Tar understood the full gravity of the situation and just how hard the world was bearing down on his team. And under the pressure, he broke down. I was in the channel when all of this was going to hell. And I can say with confidence this was the single worst night I ever experienced during my years on the staff team. If you ever wondered why the admins unanimously agree Season 2 was the worst, well, this wasn't the only reason, but it was the cherry on top. It just sucked. All of it. I don't know if there was a right decision to be made, but I know for damn sure we made the wrong one. But live and learn, I guess. Anyways, let's get back to Tyranitar.
Yeah, I remember the communication like between like staff and us and like what's going on, like are we gonna keep playing? And so we told them like we didn't have enough players, right? But I think that was like a lie. I don't remember it like completely, but I think we told them like half of our players had to leave. We can't like field enough players on the roster, which is why they made us try to reschedule it for tomorrow. But then I think like we didn't know like what was going on, so we assumed like we didn't have to play. And so like a lot of people got off to like it was like 10 o'clock at night. Like, it's like their bedtimes and stuff. Like I don't know. They got off for the night, whatever. And then I think staff like made the call that like I think they actually can field enough players. This whole time, like I was sitting in the lobby, the whole of OTW was sitting in the lobby, and like the whole team was gone or whatever. But like we had to like claw and try and get everyone back on. Like I don't know how we did that, but we did somehow. And then third map, route, like we won, but then like we didn't. And then because of like the Colby stuff, which is like, yeah, I guess that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. But like riding the momentum, like we won the past like 3 maps, I guess, like past 2 maps, and we're just like, yeah, we have anger, like we have all the momentum on our side. Like we're just gonna like shit on these guys. Then like we did for the rest of the night. But yeah, I think like just the communication was just like off at that time, because like I wasn't dragged into like the staff group chat or like told to like do anything until like my whole team had gone off. I hadn't actually like spoken to you guys in a voice chat in like the whole game, like the whole day until like 11. It was like, is this gonna happen? Like I don't know what's going on. And then when you did call me in, like obviously like we know what happened, but we got everyone back on. We played the game and then won.
Geometric didn't have their main roster for the call to continue the series. Notably, Alianos had already gone off to bed. A few swaps were made, and it was far from ideal, but at the end of the day, and the start of the next for being technical here, it worked well enough to get the job done.
At that point, I did not give a fuck about the Smurf, okay? I didn't care. At that point, like, if Storm was a Smurf, if Storm wasn't a Smurf. What I know is that this team had been... I mean, they'd been bullied, right? They had been bullied and ganged up against by the rest of the league. And so by them being able to come back and win that game regardless, I was happy for them and I was on their side at that point, honestly, because I was like, man, this team has really gone through it throughout this season. And again, a majority of them had no idea of any of the smurfing that was happening. And they were just defending their teammate, because of course you're going to defend your teammate. I was very happy for Geometric when I learned that they had actually ended up winning after all that.
So, semifinals match out of the way, and grand finals in their sights, Geometric was emotional to a fault and more hyped up than probably any other team this community has ever seen. And, to top it all off, their opponents were the completely undefeated Wisdom Academy.
We were fully on the high. There was the benefit that, I think it was Flash was his name. Well, he was like Rye Guy or something. Yeah, Ty. He got found out. They had to like field a strange off tank. They were still good, but like they were gods with Flash/Ty, but now they're like mortals. They could be defeated. That combined with the previous game, we were ready to just demolish them.
We put a lot of preparation into this specific game. I myself, outside of practice, logged in like 5 hours specifically, going on to King's Row and a lot of the other maps we expected to play, and looking specifically for on and nade spots, like on every single map, every single point, every single everything, so that we could push in. We also had specifically a whole list of comps. Like we had an Excel sheet of specific team comps that Wisdom used, and on each specific map, and what specific styles countered them, what weaknesses we noticed, what we could do. And we put in so much work into making sure that we would not be outplanned or outprepped. And so going into that game, we put ourselves in the best possible situation to succeed.
I wouldn't put it as like confident or unconfident. We were just like, we had to do what we had to do. I don't think any of us were like, oh yeah, we're gonna like lose to OTW, Wisdom Academy, because we've never been able to do well against them. It's more of like Wisdom Academy is probably like at their weakest because they lost their off tank and didn't get a chance to replace him, and that we've been training for them because we've been training for every team and practicing against every other comp they could run. We were preparing for them. I don't think we were like overly confident to the point where like we were like, oh yeah, we got this 100%. But we were like, we got this. We're not gonna lose to them. We're gonna show them still who's gonna be the winner, who's gonna take this. Well, there was a lot of close matches there.
As Flintlas mentioned there, Wisdom wasn't without their own bloody nose coming into the postseason. Their starting off-tank throughout the entire regular season, Splash, ended up being a Smurf account of Time, who in reality was a high diamond to low masters main tank. This was discovered just prior to the start of playoffs, which led the resident Goliaths scrambling to fill a gap in their roster they never expected to have. Pineapple was something of a hyper-flexible player for Wisdom, filling in as a substitute on multiple roles over the course of Season 2 as needed. However, a full-flex player is never going to be as proficient as a role specialist. Despite having a relatively deep bench, Wisdom didn't really have a good backup for Splash. They managed to get through their own server errors in the other semifinals match versus Hyperflex, though they were inarguably the weakest team out of the 4 who made it that far in the novice bracket. Sweeping them wasn't really a true show of power for Wisdom Academy, so it was almost impossible to predict who had the larger chip on their shoulder coming into the grand finals.
So for me, like, I was like, we have to grind. Like, they're really good. Actually, no, I didn't think, like, I thought they were really overrated at the time. Like, they had a lot of issues. Like, they were a novice team. Like, they had a lot of issues. Like, if we ride the wave and, like, I think, like, if we go, like, roster to roster, I think Silencer is better than, like, whatever their main tank was. Like, most roles we were better than them at. It was just, like, the cohesion that kind of, like, was the reason they were able to, like, dom us, like, the first 2 games or whatever. But we had better players, and if we grinded scrims that week, we could gain, like, we gained knowledge of the comp I think we had better coaches. Actually, no, they probably had better coaches. We have enough coaches to like learn the comps, to be good enough and be able to be there and be at that level where we could beat them because we had the better players. So like that confidence is like what we brought into the finals, and we're just like a new game. I don't know how to say it. Like any given Sunday, whatever, you can win at any game. And then we also, I don't think we played them with Silent Sword, or like we just integrated him, and like he was like a big impact. Like he was so good, and like Loki like carried us to the final.
We had Silent Sword. I was very confident. Silent Sword was my GOAT when we played the final. Yeah, sure, they won Volskaya. Whoop-de-fucking-do. Congrats on crushing Farah. We came up with a strategy and rolled them. I remember 4 had to go to dinner, so we actually put SD on off tank, and guess who got back to Moyer jail? Yeah, no, winning that map off of Wisdom was actually kind of fun as well. Either way, I was super proud of how we played as well, even though everyone and their mother was pissed. I'm like, well, if you wanted the championship, y'all should have won.
From staff's perspective, the finals was weird. The question of whether or not Stormy was a Smurf still loomed over everyone's head, and that uncertainty was maddening. A group of admins actually got together in voice chat to watch the game together, and I remember the tension being palpable. Watching what very well might be a Smurf win the championship in real time is not good for the mental health.
Yeah, I don't remember if I was specifically there, but I do know, I'm pretty sure I might have watched the VODs after, and I think I basically went, yeah, we should have caught this person so much sooner. The fact that they're a Smurf is so obvious now in retrospect. Yeah, again, at that point, end of the season, we couldn't really do anything at that point, unfortunately. I just remember there was a lot of frustration around the scenario just because there were already a lot of issues with Geo in terms of various scenarios, complications with management, issues with smurfing, allegations, stuff like that, and we just didn't act on a lot of it in time, which I think is also a big, if you want to put this in as the overarching theme of Season 2 is not necessarily acting in time on certain things.
That was a little bit stressful, just because, like, to some degree, there was like a sentiment from staff from when Geo lost a couple of games of like, oh, okay, they're beatable. And that's for 2 reasons. A very, very small reason is just what you'd expect of like, it takes less pressure off our back. It's something we can point to that says like, they are not an unstoppable force. And B, the second thing would be that it is kind of like closer confirmation that the system is working, that innocent until proven guilty was working, of like, hey, if Geo is beatable with, you know, an alleged Smurf, maybe they don't belong in intermediate, and maybe they are where they're supposed to be, even if they're at the top of the division. And so, yeah, when it was kind of obvious that they were going to win the grand finals, it was a little bit stressful, not from the sense of like staff were afraid to be wrong. It wasn't like an ego thing. It was just this is going to be paperwork, basically, which obviously we all signed up to do and is part of the job, but like that doesn't make it any less stressful.
Getting back on board with the team, however, the way they described the 4-1 victory to claim the ultimate trophy was pretty laid back. Some even admitted it felt easier than they had expected, though to be fair, I think everything was easy in comparison to the hell they faced just 1 week prior.
It was kind of a blur. At some point during the thing, I basically played cart bitch, just kind of AFK'd on the cart while my entire team just had fun for like 4 minutes as we rolled through it. It was just a blur and like easy for us.
I remember second map being close, and it was a loss. I don't remember which map specifically it was. It was like, okay, this is going to be a back and forth affair. Specifically from there, something clicked on Dorado. We finished Dorado, win that, close game, something that earlier season Geometric would have lost and dropped throughout some way. But we managed to claw our way into that map specifically and win that one. Once we had won that, it was just like our team was firing on all cylinders. And when we got to Ilios, I remember just spectating just like as many different players as I could and being like, oh my goodness, like this is insane.
Now, the game itself wasn't without a few eyebrow-raising moments. While Stormy was generally known as the starting flex support, there were a few times over the course of the season where he would swap to either DPS or off-tank. In the grand finals, there was a few maps where he swapped onto hitscan, and, well, I'll just say his performance really didn't help him beat the allegations.
It was a Colby thing. He was like, I think Storm can do really good on DPS. Like, we'll let him like. I think he was our best or second best player at the time, and like he could play wherever. He was like good at everything. So we put him there, and then he did really good. And Corbs was like, obviously, like it's like DPS is more important at this lower division because like if you hard carry, then like you'll hard carry and win. But like as a flex support, like it's a lot more difficult to do that. And it's also like it's more like Corbs can play more. Like he's not that bad at the video game. He should be fun. And then I remember we played like Estazome on Zarya for something, which is like that was I think like all the coaching and like roster decisions were like were Colby, but like all like the weird decisions or whatever were Colby because I'd like do the scrims, I'd do like the background, like getting players, make sure players are fine. Then Colby would do like the in-game stuff.
Of course, there was nothing more that could be done. If Stormy was a Smurf, he had essentially gotten away with it by now. It's not like staff were going to pause the grand finals and make a determination on whether or not he was guilty. As the curtains fell on this match, Geometric only dropped one map, which, to be fair, was one where Stormy was on DPS. It brought a mixed bag of emotions for the entire community. Many of the players in the higher divisions gave their full support to Geometric for what they had to go through during the semis. I'll give you one guess as to how Novice felt about the win, and as for staff, it was somewhere in the middle.
I was fine regardless. I was still worried about a Smurf potentially being there and what it would mean for League Zero if Geometric did end up winning. But at that point I was just like mentally like checked out a little bit. I was like, this season needs to be done. I don't care who wins at that point. It's just like, hey, whoever wins, I'm happy for them. It does suck. I was kind of rooting for Wisdom Academy because I know that Navino had run the team very well, and they were definitely like the biggest success story. And I'm always going to root for teams that have very little drama to end up winning it because they make my life easy as a staff. So that's why I was rooting for them. But at that point, I was just happy for the season to be done.
Now, while that concludes Season 2, this is far from the end of Geometric's story. Before we get into the good stuff, let's go over some not-so-fun things first. In the time between Seasons 2 and 3, the rule keepers on staff, Shund in particular, started investigating extremely deep down a rabbit hole with supposed proof regarding Hattori Hanzo and Colby smurfing. This culminated in about 3 months of research, proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that Hattori Hanzo was actually the smurf of a Grandmaster support player named Orbit. As for Colby, Shund was able to link him to an undrafted account in the Novice Division, and keep in mind he was a Masters level DPS that was benched on Easy Clap up in the Advanced Division. There was also a lot of new circumstantial evidence pointing towards the possibility that Stormy was affiliated with Colby and Hattori Hanzo, though frustratingly enough, there was still nothing concrete. But I think rather than trying to explain all the nitty-gritty details, it might be better to allow Shund to talk about what went into this monster of an investigation.
My heart, my soul, my blood, my sweat, my tears, my sanity, hours and weeks of my life went into it. It was... Those kinds of situations are weird because on one hand, I wouldn't be doing the job if I didn't love it. But like on the other hand, it is kind of weird to say like I became like obsessed and really enthralled with this idea of like this lead and busting these potential smurfs because like somebody in a position of power like that, you don't want somebody who's just looking to bust and make arrests. I'm gonna need you to cut out the part where I just said looking to bust, but you don't want somebody who's just looking exclusively for guilt, you know? And I think that was a really good trait that I did have. I think I do a pretty good job of following the innocent until proven guilty standard that we had. You said I don't have to reveal anything specific, and to be honest, it's been so long that like I don't even remember who it was that like had initially reached out to me. It was such a long saga. I'm trying to just like get all my thoughts in order, but basically it was like you said, early preseason. It was brought back to our attention. Somebody in the community DM'd, I think me, and basically just said like, hey, you should take a look at this, you know, about Hanzo. And like just from the screenshots alone, that was like irrefutable evidence that Hanzo was smurfing. And obviously there's steps that go into that to make sure like, hey, these screenshots aren't fake and stuff like that. But you know, under the assumption that this person is telling the truth and that, you know, it's not being taken out of context, I just remember it being incredibly blatant. And so, you know, from those screenshots, that evidence, it was revealed that Hanzo was a smurf of somebody named Orbit, who was a GM player, and that they purposefully lied lied about their skill to play at a lower level. I think they were DMing this person and telling them, basically. And so there was some information that this person couldn't share with me just because it would reveal who they were. So they couldn't give me Orbit's like Discord tag or battle tag. A rule keeper and me having, investigated Smurfs for a couple seasons now, I was able to find it on my own. I don't remember where I was able to find it, but I think I just looked in like the OW or GGNA or something like that and found it. That was kind of everything we had been missing. Everybody and their mother had come to us and said, hey, Hanzo's really good. Hey, Hanzo is probably smurfing. And for the most part, staff were like, yeah, Hanzo's really sus, but we're not going to take that action and just like exclude somebody from our community if we're not 100% sure that it's malicious. We want to give them the benefit of the doubt. And now that we had that, it was enough to ban them. As for Stormy, it was a little bit different. We'd kind of linked Hanzo, Orbit, and Colby together and kind of like discovered Colby's involvement and knowledge of the situation, if I remember correctly. But Stormy was a little bit different in that, like, from everything that we found out, there was kind of like some more really weird evidence that Stormy might have been smurfing, but again, it didn't reach that threshold. And I think at this point, we had basically just kind of had enough of this situation, and we took a really unprecedented step using that admin clause, saying there isn't enough evidence to ban you. We want to give you the benefit of the doubt, but we need kind of some more evidence to support the idea that you are not a smurf, right? There's too much suspicion involved. And so we use the admin clause to kind of act outside the standard rules and basically say, until we have more information about who Stormy is and their skill level, they're just going to be ineligible. And they were informed of this. And then as far as I know, Stormy never said another word in the League Zero server. So, you can kind of figure out for yourself what that means.
There is some circumstantial evidence pointing towards the idea that Stormy was a shared Smurf account between Colby and a few of his friends, all of which ranged from Diamond to low GM among different roles. While it does seem to fill in the blanks, unfortunately that remains the largest unsolved mystery in all of League Zero to this day. I did try to reach out to Colby directly to finally get an answer on this matter while researching for this documentary, but predictably, I didn't get a response. Now, getting back to the team itself, the vast majority of the players on Season 2 Geometric were unaware of the smurfing, both confirmed and potential. Of course, they had suspicions, but being so new to this kind of environment, they had no way of confirming any of the doubts they might have had. At the end of the day, they really didn't know any more than the rest of us.
So imagine you're a Piat player, right? And you go into a bronze game. Now, there's a very good potential that you will pop off and you will carry, But at the core of it, Overwatch is a very much team game. I think we were prepared to replace Storm. So in the grand scheme of things, when I think about it, I think if we didn't have Storm, it wouldn't have mattered during playoffs because we were already very fired up. We were already so determined to win. It wasn't a possibility in our head. The whole thing with OTW kind of made it so we had this mentality of, fuck you guys, watch this. So having Storm, whether he was there or not, I think we would have won.
And, of course, I had to ask them all during the interviews if they believed the possibility, if not probability, of Stormy being a Smurf potentially undermined their championship. An extremely loaded question, I know, and one I'm sure they didn't enjoy answering, but I gotta give them credit for rolling with the punches.
I always think of this one thing. If Storm wasn't there, we still had Golden Pants. I think we probably lose to OTW, but I only think we lose to OTW because we couldn't get enough players back. I think if Golden Pants was able to show up at the time that Stormy was, and Stormy was banned, we would still win that map because we played with Golden Pants because Storm didn't show up to a couple of our scrims, and I didn't feel much of a difference with Golden Pants or Stormin. Like, maybe I think the sleeps were hit less often, but like the healing output onto me and our team members were still good. The antis were still good. So like, I still think that whenever that happens, if Storm wasn't there, we would still win that because we had a good backup support for him. I think it would be a lot harder because at the time, I still live by this, Geometric had two fronts. It was me and Storm. So we would have been left with just one person they had to focus on. But that also takes off the pressure from Alianos and SD Awesome, who during that whole final map or final series showed that if you don't keep an eye on them, they will just kill your whole backline.
Not really. Wisdom went undefeated with a Smurf on their team. So why should that take away from our chances? Even though Hattori Hanzo was a Smurf, we only played 2 games with her. It wasn't like she was smurfing the entire season, unlike Time And they were like, oh, no, Time is easily replaceable. Like, no, the fuck he wasn't. He was your silent carry on that team. Yeah, sure, Rye Guy got the MVP, but, like, Time did so much for that team. Like, we could easily expose that in the finals. And that's how confident we were going into that finals, because we knew that their off-tank situation was going to be hell.
For us, it was like, it is what it is. Like, we had no contact with them at all. Like, by the start of season 3, like, it was Alianos, Flintlets, and I were, like, coming in to do stuff, because, like, Alianos was the manager, and I was captain, and I think Flintlets was our protected pick. And, like, that was it. We were just on our own, waiting for season 3 to start, and then we're like, oh, well, and then I think Alianos was the one who banned them, like, officially in our server. It wasn't that big of a shock. We were kind of expecting it to happen eventually, especially because, like, Storm was, like, not proven at all. We were like, and Hattori Hanzo we were like, Hanzo's definitely smurfing. Like, she got bumped up a whole division, but they just couldn't prove it. So it wasn't that big of an impact on us. I mean, I think you have to take it with a grain of salt that, like, Storm was probably a Smurf. Well, like, Storm was just Colby. I mean, like, like, you have to take it with a grain of salt. But Wisdom was a great team, and there was a bunch of other people who were playing super hard that day too. It's not just the fact that we had Storm with us. So it is definitely like you gotta put a little asterisk next to that, like, season 2 championship. But I don't think it really takes away from how hard, like, Silent Sword and 4 and Golden Pants and everyone worked in STO Zone and Flintlets did to, like, get that win.
While it is tempting to say that Geometric wouldn't have gotten as far without Smurfs, I think distilling their entire season down to that one point overlooks what each and every legitimate player accomplished, and how they grew. Not to mention, you can unfortunately ask the same question for a majority of the novice teams in Season 2. There were a lot of Smurfs running around back then. Even Wisdom got caught up in it all. And the blame for that does squarely lie on League staff. That entire season was one giant learning experience, which is less than the community deserved, but it's ultimately what we got. Moving forward into Season 3, a lot of changes were made to make sure something like that never happened again. Many of those changes were directly impacted by what happened with Geometric.
I think Geometric speaks to a lot of different things. The first and foremost, most obvious example is the team speaks to the difficulty that we and anyone has in making a draft league. At least a draft league that's not like one division that is, the highest skill tier, where, obviously anybody can play. But when you have those different divisions, it's incredibly hard to do that min-maxing that I mentioned earlier. And Geo was a great example of how, by trying to min-max all the important things, you can't give up any of those things, but try to min-max all of those important things. There are going to be situations created that you can't solve. In this situation, we wanted to balance innocent until proven guilty. We wanted to balance individual fun. We wanted to balance the fun and enjoyment of everybody else in the league. And, we also wanted to create an environment where players in a lower skill tier could experience this draft tournament. And it's hard to kind of prioritize one of those over the other. To me personally, I think that legacy of Hattori Hanzo on League 0 was overall beneficial. And I know that probably sounds weird out loud, but I think that Hattori Hanzo taught us a lot of lessons about, first of all, how to find and investigate Smurfs better. That's a huge lesson we learned in Season 2, and one that we carried into Season 3 and future seasons as well. But also, I think it taught us how to step outside of our shell and make those tough decisions that are outside the rules, outside the standard way we do things, that ultimately need to be made to ensure, like, the continuation of, like, the league or the season or the match that's currently going on. I think we did a much better job of using that right that we had as the staff team in the second half of the season and also future seasons to kind of make decisions that were in the best interest of the league as a whole.
I mean, our big change from Season 2 onwards was just not only having a better understanding of what to look out for when it comes to Smurfs on a roster, but also putting together safeguards that make it much more difficult for someone to Smurf. Whether that's like the level requirement or being required to go to Pugs before the draft, or we did a bunch of things. Shund in particular got very good at being able to sniff out warning signs for Smurfs. Really hats off to Shund for putting in a ton of effort on that front. Season 2 is a season that I cannot say that I'm very proud of. But I can say that as far as like administration and discipline and just Smurf prevention, we definitely learned a lot from it.
But even then, with all that said and done, Geometric's story still doesn't end there. Tyranitar handed over the reins to the branding to Alianos, Flintlaz, and Churd for Season 3, and if you can believe it, they remained one of the top teams. They even made it all the way to the Season 3 Novice Division Grand Finals for a rematch against Wisdom Academy. And while they didn't win a repeat title, they did make it all the way to a Map 7, and they did it without any Smurfs this time.
I think like the legacy of Geo, like Wooly and Alianos, like did it, like they're actually awesome. Like did such a good job in Season 3, Season 4, and like continuing on to like OD other tournaments. Like I think Geometric has become, like I'm proud of what it's become. Like I didn't like, and that is all like just because of like Alianos. Like they created this into like so much more than I thought it could be, which is like I'm proud of that. I guess I'm the founder, I guess, but as a person who's been like there since day one, like I'm proud of what they've done.
So, have you found your answer? What would you do if you found yourself in Geometric's shoes? Now you know their story and what they went through. Do you think you could survive? Hell, more than that. Do you think you could win? To have almost all your fellow competitors pray for your downfall, the admins holding your every move under a microscope, and even those who are supposed to be your comrades undermining your accomplishments behind your back. Not many could push through, but Geometric did. I think it's easy to distill down this team to just the actions of Colby, as something of an evil mastermind that did everything he could to sabotage every aspect of League Zero that season. And if certain rumors are to be believed, that's far from the worst thing he's ever done. But we're not here to talk about that. Ultimately, this isn't his story. It's Geometric's, and they ended up becoming so much more than a black stain left by a few bad actors. In time, those who wronged the community will be forgotten, as they deserve to be. But the legacy of Geometric has already outgrown that shadow cast over them from the very start. Champions or not, they fought tooth and nail for every single inch. Tenacious to a fault, and with a, shall we say, healthy dose of banter, the real players of Geometric suffered through a war on 3 fronts. They came back bruised and bloody, but they came back with a crown on their head.
Well, for me, when I was playing on Geometric, like it was mostly a thing I wanted to show to my personal IRL friends that like, hey, I may not be turbo high rank in Overwatch at this time, but I can still easily show all of my friends that I'm still good enough to be in a higher rank than what I was at the time. Because I was sitting like hard stuck 2700. 2600 currently, like flopping in between there, and my friends were always like, oh, look at you, hard stuck plat, can't even make it to diamond. And I'm like, you know what, guys, shut up. Entered the tournament and, you know, tried my best to put on a good show for my friends, mostly.
It's kind of the beginning of me discovering how competitive Overwatch was. Back at the time, I was obviously gold, you know? And I didn't really understand the game, but as Colby, Tyranitar, Nico, all these people started teaching me, and we all started queuing up together in comp, and started calming and started understanding stuff, like all tracking, all pian, Atanic. As we started understanding all this stuff, the game just felt new. Like it was an old game at the time, you know, it was like 4 years old, right? But the game felt new because we started seeing what wasn't there. We started seeing that it was very complex. It wasn't just about shooting things and popping ultimates. It's like somebody took off the behinds that were hiding there. And after that, you know, I was able to climb pretty high just because of what this team taught me. But what it meant to me was, you know, just a bunch of memories with pretty good people.
That's tough to say. Before then, I was on, I think it was Icarus Spell, and it was like they were the hyper top team, and I was playing the much same role as I was on Geo, as like the straight-laced person there to kind of like ground our exterior presence. Honestly, it was kind of different. Whereas with that team, yeah, we were good, but it's like they were just not good to be around. This team was good to be around. I was not like, you don't need to say that to any of the people there. I was having fun with it. At the end of the day, that's what matters. If you're having fun, even if you win or lose, you're just having a good time. That's just how it is. And I had a good time with Geo.
I was in a weird spot because I had just left college because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was just kind of working and like doing nothing. And so I was like, I just needed something to do, and it was a pretty good like place to just come and play video games, and that's not Overwatch competitive. That would make me insanely mad or like frustrated. It was just a good place to come and like put a little bit of my energy into something, you know, and it was really good. And you know, like, and starting off of that, like I'm still doing stuff with Geo now and Trank, and like I've met a lot of great people through it. So it was I say it's a pretty important thing to me that I like got to play on Geo season 2, even though it was like a crazy season and we were like the villains and all the Smurf allegations and stuff. It was a pretty cool introduction to like the drama side of the tier like 76 competitive Overwatch, but so it was pretty fun, and I think it's a pretty important like thing that I just joined up for fun after watching a dividing video about League Zero.
Season 2 Geometric was my first ever time playing competitive Overwatch, so this was the opening that allowed me to get so much better at the game. Now I'm competing in collegiate Overwatch. It was the gateway that started something that I really wanted to pursue. Granted, I would never play in League Zero again after that season. Like, yeah, I'd still be involved. I was staff a couple seasons later, but it was like I still wanted to compete and play. It got me onto many teams. It got me onto Altiora, if you remember one of them. One of their feeder teams, and it pretty much just allowed me to grow as a player and grow as a person, as well as be a better leader.
It was probably the first team that truly got me hyped for Overwatch competitive scene. It's what led to me joining a lot of the teams where I've met my closest friends, mainly Mob Mentality. Without Geometric, no one would have heard of my name. No one would have picked me up in that intermediate next year. And then I wouldn't have my two closest friends being Z and Kylist. So it means probably the most to me outside of Mob Mentality, being that I also made a lot of good friends there, being Churd, and like I got to hang out with Tyranitar a little bit more because I used to hang out with him. So it was a fun place, and it has a lot of good memories for me.
Like personally, I just like after most things in life, I just move on from. But this is like I look back at it and it's like it's like when I realized that like most time shouldn't spend like I have other things to do, and like not just being like doing draft leagues and like getting in drama is just like maybe I shouldn't spend all my time doing this, you know. It also like seems like a growing point for me. Like I was like in 8th grade, like awkwardest moment of my life. Like I look back in it and it was just like to see how much I've grown. Like I'd be more like responsible of my players and like be less oblivious of everything now. I think it was a lot of fun still. It was an awesome experience. So I'll just take away the memories and all the fun, like amount of joy that I got from winning like championship game. The semifinal game will like be with me for the rest of my life. So yeah.